KSBY News starts right now.
One person with a gun is scary enough. When you have three masked, with bulletproof vests and rifles, that's like going into a war scene.
Local law enforcement reacts to the massacre in San Bernardino this morning that killed 14 people and injured 17 more. Good evening and thanks for joining us for our news at 10. A deadly mass shooting today just hours away from us. Several attackers with assault rifles opened fire at the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino, a facility for people with developmental disabilities. The shooting erupted during a holiday party in a conference room at about 11 a.m. with hundreds of people on the premises of the three-building facility. Scores of law enforcement personnel responded, shutting down the surrounding area, but witnesses say three suspects managed to escape in a black SUV. About 4.5 hours later, a tip led officers to that black SUV and a high-speed chase began, followed by a shootout involving that SUV about 2 miles away. Here's a breakdown of the latest information on the suspects. Investigators have identified one of them as Saeed Farouk and another as possibly his brother, though it is unclear if Farouk was one of the two suspects who were killed by gunfire in that black SUV. We now know those two were a man and a woman. A third person seen fleeing the scene is in custody tonight. San Bernardino police say the attackers were each armed with a long gun and a handgun and were wearing tactical style clothing that was, quote, loaded with magazines for a gunfight. Authorities are tracing the serial numbers on those guns, and authorities will be dispatched to those addresses that correspond to the serial numbers. Meanwhile, the suspect's brother-in-law spoke tonight at a news conference with the Council for American Islamic Relations.
I am very sad that people lost their life and there's victims out there. I wish speed recovery to them, and again, I am in shock that something like this could happen.
Gina Kim has been in San Bernardino all day and has the latest on that.
NBC News has confirmed with multiple law enforcement sources that one of the deceased suspects is an American citizen named Saeed Farouk, and that the other male suspect was his brother. The identity of the deceased female suspect has not yet been released, but police now believe that most, if not all, of the gunmen have been accounted for. Police say that the rampage happened after an argument broke out at a holiday party for county employees. Farouk was an employee in that county agency. Live in San Bernardino, Gina Kim, back to you.
Well, since today's incident, families of the victims have reunited with their loved ones. Evacuated survivors from the Inland Regional Center hugged and greeted worried family members. Some employees at the facility had locked themselves inside rooms during the shooting, using cell phones to communicate with family members outside.
They turned off the lights and tried to block the door and lock it so that they couldn't get in if the shooters were around that area.
She just said there was a shooting. She's scared. She's hiding in the closet with two other people.
All I heard was there's a shooter at work, so my immediate reaction was just to come over here. But her phone died, so she called me from a friend's phone, and apparently she's okay. She's still in front of the building right now. They separated who saw the shooters and who didn't, and right now they're just interviewing everybody. I guess there was multiple shooters or something like that.
Again, 14 people were killed and at least 10 of the 17 wounded are in critical condition tonight. A police officer was one of the victims, though the officer's injuries are not considered to be life-threatening. State officials reacted to what happened today. Governor Jerry Brown says, quote, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims' families and everyone affected by the brutal attack. California will spare no effort in bringing these killers to justice. President Obama was also briefed about the mass shooting during an interview with CBS News this afternoon. Here's part of his response.
We have a pattern now of mass shootings in this country that has no parallel anywhere else in the world. And there's some steps we could take, not to eliminate every one of these mass shootings, but to improve the odds that they don't happen as frequently. Common sense gun safety laws, stronger background checks.
Well, before we take a break here, let's take a look at the scene in San Bernardino. Again, this is near Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino. 14 people again died today, 17 more injured, 10 of them critically. We'll be back with more updates and local news right after the break. Stay with us.
You're watching KSBY News, the Central Coast's #1 source for local news.
did not see anybody specifically fleeing the vehicle. It was other responding vehicles that saw this person running away from the scene, stopped him and detained him. For that reason, we don't know if he was involved or what his involvement is at this point.
What is the motive at this point?
So we initially put out that we had information that there were upwards of 3 shooters. Right now, as we continue to drill down on information and the witness statements that we have, it really looks like we have 2 shooters, and we're pretty comfortable that the 2 shooters that we believe went into the building are the 2 shooters that are deceased up on San Bernardino Avenue.
How many places have you searched thus far, and what connection?
You're listening to live coverage of a press conference with the San Bernardino police chief. Let's go ahead and listen for a couple more minutes here.
We have a house in Redlands, which is where the pursuit originated, where our information took us to. That's being actively worked as well. And as I said, Mr. Farouk was a county employee, so we have obviously secured his office space in case that has any component to the investigation.
Do you have his date of birth? The Redlands, is there a residence? Is that a residence of his specifically?
It is a residence listed for him. I don't know if he was living there.
Chief, what was the motive then? What's the motive for all
We don't have the motive at this point, and I'm really being careful because we all know that when these types of things happen, and we've seen this happen time and time again, there's a lot of information that comes out in the first day, in the first couple days, and that information changes significantly in the days that follow. So until we know the motive or we really have something clear evidentiary based on that motive, I just don't want to weigh in on that right now.
Act of terrorism at this point? Chief, have you ruled out terrorism at this point? Is that still on the table?
We have not ruled out terrorism.
Chief, is there any evidence that
So I'm sorry.
supervisors were killed?
Either boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband and wife, something of that nature.
Any evidence, sir, that Mr. supervisors or bosses were killed in that shootout there?
So I had indicated early on that we have victims at the scene. Up until within, I would say, the last couple of hours, we had been working on what we felt were explosive devices left at the scene. We confirmed that we believe that those were explosive devices. I think about an hour or 2 ago, the bomb squad finally disposed of those particular items. So we are just now getting in there and starting to process the crime scene per se. I don't have the identification on any of the victims at this point.
Can you talk about the Redlands townhouse?
I don't know what precipitated it.
Arguments at the event itself.
I don't know.
Specifically about the
Okay, we're
Redlands
listening to live
townhouse.
coverage
Can you
of
say
a
that
press conference by
arrived
Chief Jared
25
Bergwan from the
people
San
with a man
Bernardino
and
Police
another
Department. A
woman
bit of
and
new information we're learning tonight. They are now indicating that they believe that the 2 suspects who were killed in that black SUV this afternoon were the sole gun people involved, and they do believe that Saeed Farouk, whom they had identified earlier in the day, had some sort of relationship with a female who was also killed in that SUV. And the police chief there indicating that they believe that the suspects were either married or in some other sort of romantic relationship. They've also confirmed that they are comfortable at this point that it was just the 2 of them that were involved in the shooting this afternoon.
.23 caliber assault rifle. One was called a DPMS model A15. The other was a Smith & Wesson MMP 15 model. And then both suspects also were armed with semi-automatic handguns. One was manufactured by Llama, and the other was manufactured by Smith & Wesson.
Did Farouk purchase any of those weapons?
I'm going to leave that. ATF is doing the workup on those weapons, and I'll let them weigh in on that later on when they've had time to do that part of their investigation.
Chief, about the explosive devices, I'm sorry I couldn't hear you.
All right, we're going to continue to cover and watch events this evening very closely here, but again, a couple of developments that we just learned. The 2 suspects killed in that black SUV today, they believe were the 2 that were involved in the shooting this afternoon, and the sole members of the assault team that moved into that killing scene. 14 people killed today, 17 more injured, 10 of them critically, and we will continue to monitor those events. But we want to switch gears right now and talk a little bit about the weather. We have an impending rainstorm, it sounds like.
Yes, so some rain is on the way. So tomorrow you're going to want to bring a rain jacket and possibly an umbrella. It could affect your commute back home after work tomorrow. So I'll have all those details in your microclimate forecast. Here's a shot from San Luis Obispo, shot by our photographer Kenny Nichols. And I'll have those details in our forecast coming up after the break.
And again, as you can see, the World Trade Center spire is lit up with the colors of the French flag tonight, blue, white, and red. That is also the case at San Francisco's City Hall building, a show of solidarity and tribute to those who died in the attacks. Police in both American cities are on high alert, by the way, though there has been no specific threat against the U.S. The State Department has been working to determine if there were any American casualties, but Facebook has a function that allows you to see if your friends are in the area and are safe. And Christina Favuzzi looked into that for us. Christina, what did you find?
Well, Dan, if you type safety check into the search bar on Facebook, it will pull up a list of your friends in the area of the attacks. A couple of my friends marked themselves safe. This is similar to checking into a location. So my friend Haley Wong checked herself in safe. She's a Cal Poly student studying abroad in France right now, and you can see these friends here checking in and showing that they are so thankful to see that she is okay. So again, type safety check into the search bar and Facebook will populate your friends in the area and tell you whether they have marked themselves safe. Dan.
KSBY News starts right now.
We begin with breaking news. 2 people were shot and killed tonight in Santa Maria, the city's first homicides of the year. Officials say one victim died at the scene of the shooting. The other was taken to the hospital where he died from his injuries. Charlie Misra is in Santa Maria for us tonight, where an investigation is now underway. Charlie, what are police saying about this?
Dan, it has been several hours now that police have been out here working this investigation, combing the area for evidence and interviewing potential witnesses. They have a section of the street here blocked off. I can still see the forensic unit off in the distance. The street's blocked off from Church Street out that way all the way to where we are right now. And just to give you an idea, we're on West Main Street and Oakley Avenue, really right off the main drag. Well, I'll give you a quick look at where that is on the map right there. We spoke to Chief Ralph Martin a little while ago, and Chief Martin says the 2 men who died appear to be Hispanic and in their early 20s. He has confirmed that. He's not sure if it's gang-related at this point, and Martin said there were multiple pistol shell casings found in the area. He said the victims appear to have been walking on the sidewalk when they were approached either from behind or from the side. He says they may have been chased.
Last homicide that we had just a few weeks ago was a double homicide. So here again tonight we have another double homicide. Okay, we've had 17 homicides in 13 months. You know, it's obviously something going on. We're going to try to get to the bottom of it.
There's no motive yet. SMPD isn't sure how many shooters there were, and they are not sure if this is related to any other previous shootings. After speaking with police, they did say that one of their main goals is to try and find surveillance video from one of the nearby businesses, looking at cameras such as this one that's on the top of this building. After speaking with one of the lieutenants earlier, he said that there is a business in this block, a plumbing shop that has about 8 cameras on the top of it, and he was hoping that that business had at least 1 camera working, so that way they would have surveillance video to use. Dan?
Charlie, it looks like the area is pretty well blocked off at this point, I'm imagining, though. So with the slowing in the neighborhood, I'm guessing that probably some neighbors have been out there looking around. Have you seen anybody out checking out what's happened?
We have seen a few neighbors out, Dan, not so much on Main Street, but out toward the back there, out on Church. We had seen about a half a dozen neighbors, or maybe a little bit more.
Tonight, after hearing hours of public testimony from his supporters, the California Coastal Commission decides whether to fire its executive director.
Plus, northern San Luis Obispo County residents consider plans to create a water district to manage local groundwater.
And after a 7-month stalemate, Orchid teachers rallied tonight for higher wages. We hear from both sides.
KSBY News starts right now.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for the news at 11. I'm Karina Corral.
And I'm Dan Shadwell. We begin with breaking news tonight. After a day-long hearing in Morro Bay, the Coastal Commission has voted to oust Executive Director Charles Lester.
Angel Russell has been at the meeting all day where hundreds of Charles Lester's supporters showed up to hear his fate. So Angel, we understand you just spoke with Lester. What's his reaction to all of this?
Well, as you can imagine, he was very disappointed by this outcome. In fact, a lot of people were today. 253 people spoke in support of Lester. And this morning when I got here at 9, over 500 people were in front of the auditorium in support to make sure he does not get fired. Now, after the public comment around 6 o'clock, the 12 commissioners met behind closed doors for 2 hours to deliberate. Commissioners said they couldn't go into the specific issues they had with Lester's leadership, but they stated they can't legally discuss those reasons at this time. All that was touched on was that it was communication issues with Lester between staff. And commissioners assured people their goal to protect the coast still remains the same.
Well, communication is a two-way street, and I feel like I am a good communicator, generally speaking.
We're sworn to protect the coast, and we will continue to do so, even when it means making decisions that are unpopular.
Now, what you're listening to, that's the crowd cheering for Lester's time in his position, but they booed the commissioners after they read that final vote. And after that final vote was read, many of the commissioners left in a police escort. Now, the executive director, his dismissal is going to be effective immediately. They did not say which temporary person will be taking over in the meantime. Now, this is the agency's first time firing an executive director. Dan, Karina?
Right, Angel, real quickly before we let you go, I wanted to ask you, we'd been hearing rumors that part of this might have stemmed from an agenda to try to move the commission into a more pro-development kind of stature. Were you hearing anything like that from the protesters tonight?
Oh, that's actually what we mostly heard from the protesters, is they do feel that the commission staff of 12 have some kind of bias as to what they want to do with the coastal line. But the commissioners did speak on that actually right after the public comment. And they pretty much wanted to assure people that they're volunteers and they do this on their free time, and that their goal to protect the coast is still the same. It was more of just personal issues they have with the executive director that caused them to make this decision.
And Angel, did Charles Lester comment on that at all? Did he weigh in whether he thinks this does have to do with the decisions he makes?
No, Karina, he didn't touch on that political reason behind it. He mostly just touched on the communication issue that they currently had together. So when it comes to that controversy, he did not make any statement.
All right. Well, it's been a very long day for you, Angel. We appreciate your hard work today. Thank you for keeping us apprised. We have new information tonight as residents and landowners in northern San Luis Obispo County are faced with a big decision about their most vital resource, which is water. Tonight, locals gathered at a forum to discuss measures that will affect their groundwater basin, and Christina Favuzzi talked with both sides. She joins us now live in the newsroom. Christina, what would these proposed measures do exactly? Do we know?
Dan, measures A and B would fund and create a local water district for the Paso Robles groundwater basin and ensure that water is not exported and prevent the state from taking over. But the argument for local control isn't convincing everyone. The all-mail election ballots were just mailed out on Monday and should be starting to arrive at people's homes. About 6,000 people are registered to vote on these measures, and those ballots are due on March 8th. Reporting live in the newsroom, Christina Favuzzi, KSBY News. Thank you, Christina. Dozens of teachers who work for the Orcutt Unified School District rallied tonight for higher wages. The Orcutt Educators Association says its members have been working without an agreement since July of last year. They say after 10 years of service with the district, an Orcutt teacher makes $12,000 less annually than a teacher with the same qualifications in Santa Maria.
We are the lowest paid district in the Santa Maria Valley. We are asking for our compensation package to reflect a little bit higher.
Now, on the other side, the district says the union's demands are not financially feasible, adding that educators have had a 9% ongoing salary increase over the past 2 years, with a proposed 3% increase this year. Superintendent Debbie Blow says while we are committed to providing a competitive salary for our teachers, we must also remain fiscally solvent and cannot approve an increase beyond what the district can afford, not only this year, but in the future. Right now, the district and OEA have declared an impasse. The next step is for both parties to work with a state-appointed mediator.
Today, a jury found 2 Santa Barbara gang members guilty of shooting a man to death back in 2013. Investigators say these 2 men, 25-year-old Isaac Jimenez and 22-year-old Joseph Castro, were at a party with the victim, Kelly Hunt, the night of the murder. He was found with 4 gunshot wounds near his heart, chest, and 1 on his back. District Attorney Joyce Dudley says both men are expected to be sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole and an additional 25 years to life for using a firearm. Jimenez will be sentenced on March 7th, Castro on April 5th.
A former UCSB student is under arrest tonight, accused of a sexual assault that happened on campus in 2014. Investigators say 21-year-old Daniel Jang Chen of San Ramon was a student at the school from 2012 to 2013. Now, back in 2014, a woman reported that she was sexually assaulted, and at that time, investigators say they searched the crime scene and recovered evidence. Last month, police say Chen was arrested on an unrelated felony in Alameda County. Police say DNA evidence collected from him and entered into a database linked him to that 2014 rape. Chen was booked into Santa Barbara County Jail on suspicion of rape, false imprisonment, and battery with serious bodily injury. Well, the FBI puts pressure on the remaining Oregon protesters to turn themselves in. Coming up, we'll learn the results of tonight's negotiations.
Plus, after months of outrage over the deadly shooting of a black teenager in Ferguson, Missouri, the Department of Justice is suing the city.